Hello and welcome to the inaugural episode of EML Book Club, where me and TK Jones, will be talking about some leftist theory books, and we will be discussing many aspects of theory, many aspects of uh, leftist literature, where we'll be covering more, not the regular stuff that you may have already read, but some interesting things that will give you interesting perspective on the theory and history. So how are you going? How's it going, TK?
I am doing very good. Thank you for having me back for the book club. I'm very excited to delve into the book we've chosen.
Yeah, and the book we've chosen is Fascism, What It Is and How to Fight It by Leon Trotsky. And I will be sending it to chat, and you can find it in the video description if you're watching this in recording, where you can follow with us through the text, and where we'll be discussing like sort of block by block what Trotsky is talking about here and trying to apply it to today's world. But let us start with like this thing that I'm really shocked that this whole book club was planned, I guess, a month ago. But at the same time, we sort of like we had this thing happen in America, the Unite the Right March, which was basically one of the first, or at least the biggest, fascist march in America, where there was an outright attack on the leftists, where one person died.
It was centered around a Confederate statue, wasn't it? Or was that just coincidental?
It was originally, like they were saying that we will march in defense of this statue, but I'm not really sure this whole deal with the blood and soil is somehow connected to the Confederacy.
Yeah.
Like blood and soil, my God. Yeah, as the chat is saying right now, it's the biggest white supremacy march in the last 100 years. So we are talking about something quite huge, which is comparable to this silver. What was those guys in America? The silver shirts? Yeah, the silver shirts. This was one of the biggest fascist movements in America. It was grand, and those guys were like really, really powerful. And they're like, they were really into going to war against the Europe to help the Germans. It's really fucking crazy. But that was the real deal. It was whatever was happening in America, and we see this sort of coming back, and it is actually a great time to crack open a dusty one and have a look at the old book that was written a very long time ago about fascism and recognize the relevancy or irrelevancy of it to today's world. So shall we start? Like, what was your impression about the book in general?
I found the book to be interesting. I found the way that it was written tended to be more to it's written by Trotsky, of course. It tended to sound like Trotsky had written it to a friend of his in a letter. I think because a lot of these sections are actually letters to a friend of his.
Yeah, some of them.
And because of that, I have to admit, it started to lose interest. But there'd be little sections where he would talk about how Hitler's rise to power shall be blocked for 7 years. I'm like, wait a second, that's wrong, because that was written in 1932.
He was saying that, we should support that, and he said it's delusional to think that voting for like a lesser evil is like it will delay, Yeah. But it wasn't just like him saying. He said, "Oh fuck, we need the fucking revolution, not voting," But yeah, again, like a lot of this shit, I also liked it because it was a lot of, we think that this is what will be better for Europe. And you're like, no, dude, this is exactly why you fucking got the fascists in power in your country. Like all those little snippets of like what centrists and liberals were saying, And you're like, the shocker for me, we will come to this in the. I also really like the book, and we will come to some specific parts what I enjoyed about it in the discussion. But when it said like in the when you're like reading it and you're like, oh no, this is what the Twitter is talking about right now. They use the same rhetoric as those guys, like when saying, oh, um, we shouldn't like provoke the fascists.
Or
Fascists are
just talk
there.
to them.
Yeah.
Nuanced discussion, that'll help.
You know what will be better for everyone is if Antifa didn't bring weapons. There would be no murder. No one would be hurt if
Mm.
the communists didn't provoke the fascists. And you're
Yeah,
like,
there's
oh no, they were saying the same thing 100 years ago.
exactly. There's little tidbits of advice all throughout this book where it says things like
Yeah.
essentially, if you give any platform to a fascist, they'll take it just to spout
Mm-hmm.
their, vile vitriol. And
Yeah.
Trotsky was, of course, talking about the lead up to 1932 and 33, but it still holds true today, especially in
Mm-hmm.
America. Because I read that section, I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I think I get what he means. And then Charlottesville happened. I'm like, oh crap, he's right. He's right.
Mm-hmm.
You give them an inch, and then they'll take a mile,
Exactly.
and then take Poland, and then it's World War II. All of a
Because
sudden.
I believe Yes, exactly. Because I believe that many people see fascism like the best way to look at fascism is actually through a Marxist perspective, for a very important reason. It's not like that I'm a Marxist and I say, "Oh, it's my view that is the only good one," but I guess this, idealist outlook, not materialist, but idealist outlook on fascists, um, it's really not healthy. Like the idea that it is actually the fascist idea, that fuels up those people. And if we only deal and defeat the ideas on the battlefield of debate, this will actually not do anything because the source of socialism and the source of fascism comes from the class struggle,
That's
and
right.
the class theory actually shows you why it all happened and why fascism wasn't as people like. Let's just like slowly move towards the intro and talk about it for a second because I really enjoyed what was said there. That yeah, like we thought that basically after the Second World War, fascism would be like discriminated. I will quote. Military ruin of German and Italian fascism in the World War II convinced most people that fascism had been destroyed for good and was so utterly discredited that it would never again entice any followers. Events since then, particularly the emergence of new fascist groups and tendencies in almost every capitalist country, have dispelled such wishful thinking. This is exactly like my point. It's not the ideas. Ideas are really like whatever. Like you can have a crazy white European nationalist who takes a gun and kills like 77 kids in Northern Europe, and this doesn't discredit the idea at all. At all. He may be proven like
There's still
insane. Yeah.
there's still people that are going to pick up the banner of
Mm-hmm.
whatever that guy was espousing, even if he did, go out and
Yeah.
shoot a bunch of people. We'll say, oh no,
Exactly.
he was crazy. But the idea of an ethno state is good. We'll hang on to that. We'll take
Mm-hmm.
that, and then suddenly it spreads again like a disease.
Exactly, because it is the material conditions. Like it is the main source of it is the dissatisfaction of classes. We will discuss about the material conditions of fascism when we get to it in text. But let us first start with the first chapter, fascism, what it is. And then we'll move to how to fight it. I just love the
What a
title of
short,
this fucking thing.
straight to the point.
Yeah, you're like straight to the point. And the fascism, what it is. So yeah, actually, it's a good point. Like many people label a lot of people fascists, And it's really, hard to even define fascism for many people. And many leftists can't define fascism. Some would say, no, it's like Hitler. What does it mean? like we like a lot of leftists.
Fascism.
Excuse me?
Whatever Hitler did has to be fascism. So this group of people wearing white polo shirts, they're not fascist. They're just talking about a Confederate statue. It's a whole completely different thing.
Oh, completely different.
Yeah.
So let us look what the fascism is. We see that this movement is born in Italy. And what is interesting about it, that it is a mass movement with a lot of socialist rhetoric. So it's like very anti-big business, anti-globalism, which we hear a lot today. And because Mussolini was a former socialist, he was a socialist before he became a fascist, and this is why many people really consider Nazis to be leftist socialists. We hear it all the time. And this is one of the stupidest things I've heard. But if you don't understand the material basis for fascism, this is how it seems, Let us quote the text in this regard. Where was the spot I wanted to read? The genuine basis for fascism is petite bourgeoisie. In Italy, it was a very large base. The petite bourgeoisie of the town and cities and the peasantry. In Germany, likewise, there is a large base for fascism. So it was written in 1932 before Hitler rose to power, and there is this claim that this is the petite bourgeoisie that is the basis for fascism. And we see, if we look at, for example, who traditional Workers' Party and Richard Spencer types are appealing now, we see a bunch of ideologically conscious, teenagers and students, which is normal. Those are the ideologues, those are like the guy who killed Heather. He was 20-year-old American student,
Is that do you think the main tactic of the finger quotes national socialists to use socialist rhetoric just to get the workers and the petite bourgeois on their side? Do you think?
Yes and no. In many ways, we see that the fascism rises to power when there is economic turmoil. So this is when we have a bunch of petite bourgeois and workers as well who are really fucking fucked up. Who are fucked up by the capital. So they lost everything. They feel as if oh no, we have no future. Then fascism appears, and this is the idea that really appeals to them, because it promises destruction of big capital, strong government, strong reaction to strong imposing of the law to safeguard what is left for us, our identity, our white identity, our national identity, and whatever. And so in this text later on, Trotsky describes the tactic that fascists use. Fascism is interesting because it is a mass movement that is a bourgeois mass movement in the bourgeois state. So we have a bunch of capitalists in a capitalist state, and those capitalists are fighting against capitalism. And this is mainly because those are those petty bourgeois who are first drawn to hate big capital. This is where leftist rhetoric comes in, and they're saying, oh, those big businessmen, maybe they're Jewish. I'm not saying anything, but maybe those are the Jews in charge. But we hate those people. We should destroy them. We should drive them out. We are socialists. We are fighting this, but we are fighting for our country, for our folk. When that happens, when the people are yeah, we should do that, they start to talk about the proletariat, and they start to saying that, oh, we should defeat the communists. We should defeat the social movements, we should defeat those cultural Bolsheviks and cultural Marxists, you know?
I
We
get
should
you now. Yeah.
defeat this degeneracy from the workers, from the normal people. They're saying about the workers. And so they crack down on the labor movement. They crack down on the unions. And they go really hard to destroy any bit of the, like, any bit of resistance by the workers.
Hmm.
So it's really weird. Like, it's really, because it is one of the interesting forms. I think, was it in the next chapter? No, it was later on. We'll discuss how this whole fascism thing was born. Yeah, the chat is saying that Richard Spencer is actually the son of a millionaire. Yeah, actually he's the son of a millionaire that owns a bunch of cotton farms. Which is, this is what I've heard. Fucking cotton farms. Like, God, can you be even more stereotypical? Like, fucking
history just
pro-slavery?
constantly repeating itself.
Yes, first as a tragedy, then as a farce. Or how was Marx's quote there? Or was it first as a farce, then as a tragedy? No, first a tragedy, then a farce. Basically, yes. It is really fucking funny. So, how Mussolini triumphed. The next chapter. Should we move on? Yeah. Oh, yeah. We should read
Yes.
in the previous chapter. We should say that in order to be capable of foreseeing anything with regard to fascism, it is necessary to have a definition of the idea. What is fascism? What are its base, what its form, and its characteristics? How will its development take place? Is it necessary to proceed in a scientific and Marxian manner? It is necessary to proceed in a scientific and Marxian manner. Exactly. Like, I really believe that today America is not at the verge of fascist rule. But the sole fact that there is fascism, it's alive and well, and they have Trump in charge, who they really like, and who spews this rhetoric that will later fuel the revolutionary fascist movement, like anti-establishment, anti-elites, anti-Wall Street, anti-immigrants. It's all fascism, but detached. Yeah.
This big movement of right-leaning groups have someone who's sympathetic to their movement. So when they lobby, they have someone who will listen. So they don't necessarily need to be the state. They could be yelling at the state, and the state will comply.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And I hope that doesn't happen.
Well, we will move on to this part later on in the discussion. So, how Mussolini triumphed. It's really interesting because Mussolini, actually, you know, the interesting fact that he didn't actually participate in the March on Rome? Like, this whole thing, he was a bit afraid of that, and he didn't go, you know? Fascism in Italy is interesting because many people relied on the state, you know, and they were saying that, oh, the state will protect us because those radicals, we don't want those kind here, you know. And the king and the parliament, when this whole was escalating, they were like, well, okay, we will actually support them. And at the end, they were the ones who supported the fascist rise. And that's why, like, the king never went away in Italy during the reign of Mussolini. They supported them, and we see that in Italy it was born as a counter-revolution towards the socialist revolution. Like, during is it September? No, it's it's November of 1920. When some social democrats took over just some workers took over the factories, and they were like on the verge of creating the dictatorship of the proletariat, and they didn't manage to organize it well down because of the fascists starting the slaughter of the people. They started to
I think that's mentioned in the note in this section where it's talking about the fascist campaign of violence in Bologna.
Exactly.
Bologna.
In Bologna.
I'm probably butchering that pronunciation.
It's Bologna, as far as I know.
Bologna,
Yeah.
mate. It's pronounced Bologna.
Can't you read? Bologna.
Mm.
Bologna.
Yeah, it's talking about
Yeah.
when the Social Democrat councilmen victorious in the municipal elections emerged from City Hall. They were to present the new mayor. They were met by gunfire, and then the fascists pushed out and stopped the people establishing this dictatorship of the proletariat.
Exactly. So it was fascism always comes with blood, and the blood is being
Yes.
spilled. And the crazy part is that there is this neglect exists, like from one single, outburst of individual terrorism, like for example in Charlottesville, to organized militias, fascist militias that are shooting down people and leftists and other like people that they don't like, and then it all moves to like, oh, we should give those people Czechoslovakia because why fucking not? This will contain them, but it never does.
There's a good line in this section. I'll read a bit of it. It says,
Sure.
2 years after its inception, fascism was in power. It entrenched itself thanks to the facts. The first period of its overlordship coincided with the favorable economic conjuncture, which followed the depression of 1921 and 1922. So not only does economic crisis bring up fascism, but it also only has a very short window in order to secure its power, and that's
Exactly.
very notable with Mussolini's triumph, in that it needed to be quick, it needed to be swift, and again to bring it back to today as well. These fascist movements are moving very quickly. They're trying to gain as many supporters as possible, march everywhere they can, because as soon as their movement loses steam, it topples over itself. Like with the people taking photos of the marches with the tiki torches and doxing them.
Yes.
And then they're immediately losing jobs. Families are disowning them, and one guy actually has to move out of the town he lives in because of it. So they may. I'm not calling it now, but I'm just saying they may have missed their window, and this 2-year period that Trotsky speaks of might be up.
I can't really say that because I'm not really sure. Like I'm pretty sure those guys are late. If they would come like 10 years ago, that would be better material conditions for them to rise when the economic crash, happened, and a bunch of
The
petit
global
bourgeois
financial
people.
crisis.
Exactly, and a bunch of petit bourgeois people became bankrupt. All this banking, all this the housing market in which a lot of people, a lot of middle class was investing. Like this is when I believe this could have happened, but they didn't. There was no organization at the moment that was like universal enough and had this mass movement in thought. There were a bunch of Southerners and there were a bunch of like militia movements, but they are not they're not the best. Like they were not the mass movement that we are talking about now. We're not outright fascists. They was in this identity politics. They were like they were anti-Jews, anti-blacks, pro-white, and when they lose that and when they start to address the class, this is when it becomes the mass movement. And nowadays, I'm pretty sure that we need a financial crisis, and those guys will have a window, and communists will have a window as well. By the way, this is when the rapid change is possible, and this is when it's not because there is a country in turmoil and we should act to take power. No, we like, for people who don't know it, socialists condone that, and it's called putschism. So it's like really bad to take power. Just a group of vanguard just takes power for themselves. It's not really that great. What we're talking about here is that during the financial crisis, the class, how it's called, the class aggression, class contradictions, one, and the class struggle, it becomes exposed. And we know that petit bourgeois are envious of the bourgeoisie. They want to become really rich, and they want to take power, and they feel as if those guys are pushing down on them. This is why we see a bunch of people advocating for, like, oh, we need small and medium business, we need to help small and medium business. We need to help local businesses because those, big Walmarts are invading our county, whatnot.
So there's a little quote. There's a little quote here that sort of lends credence to your argument. A very short one. Fascism is nothing else but capitalist reaction.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is the attempt of capitalism to safeguard itself. To save itself. This is why ultimately the whole deal, all this. This is why the state supports it often. This is why the big capitalism supports it. This is why the people get behind it, especially the petit bourgeois. This is because this is what it appeals to, and this is what's its ultimate task is. So as we know, there is also an interesting thing that the fascism, Mussolini's fascism, and if I am correct, also the Germans' fascism, though all of them become bureaucratic. Mussolini, I will quote the text here. Mussolini attained this at the cost of bureaucratizing the fascist party itself. After utilizing the on-rushing forces of the petit bourgeoisie, fascism strangled it within the vice of the bourgeois state. Mussolini could not have done otherwise, for the disillusionment of the masses he had united was precipitating itself into the most immediate danger ahead. Fascism, become bureaucratic, approaches very closely to the other forms of military and police dictatorship. It is no longer possesses its former social support. The chief reverse of fascism, the petit bourgeoisie, has been depicted. Only historical inatria enables the fascist government to keep the proletariat in a state of desperation and helplessness. So this is exactly what at one point happens. So this whole, they come to power and then they close, they create this bureaucratic system, which is one part of the reason why people claim that Soviet Union and Third Reich is the same fucking thing, which it isn't. And like, no one in the right state of mind would claim that. But this bureaucratization and this sort of like police and military dictatorship that it looks like is exactly why it safeguards itself and why it looks as like a Stalinist communism.
This facade of strength that fascism brings has to protect itself in any way possible, so it brings on the autocracy, totalitarianism, authoritarianism.
Yeah.
It's got to be strong, and then it attacks anyone it can.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to the next chapter, where we should discuss two topics. First is the is it here? Is it? No, it's later on. Here we'll be discussing first and foremost the social fascism. It's fascist danger looms in Germany. So let us start with this whole deal. What is the strategy of social fascism? So can you talk about it for a second? I want to sip some water. Or can you explain what social fascism is to people?
I think you'd have a more nuanced
No,
explanation.
sure. I just have, okay. So basically, social fascism. It says an idea that, oh, we have those social democrats. Those guys will be surely those non-radicals. They are a bigger enemy than fascists themselves. We should understand that social democrats are social fascists, and we should never work with them. Those guys are really dangerous. They will destroy our movement. No, 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 no. And this is the idea that the Stalinist parties, as Trotsky calls him, them here, are the main enemy. Those are the most dangerous ones, which is a really bullshit strategy, which is really not that practical, I should say.
Yeah, this was a call from the Comintern, the Stalinists at the time, because this section was written in 1930.
Yeah.
As a policy to divide the Social Democrats and the more radical left. Was that what it was getting at?
Yeah, exactly. And Trotsky here claims that it is really terrible idea, and that we see that it destroys this. It destroys the movement, and while this is the fascism is exactly the time when we should join our forces with social democrats. Most of the radicals don't want to do that. They claim that those guys are social fascists. We shouldn't do that. And I like to what was this good quote? Yeah, if the Communist Party, in spite of the exceptionally favorable circumstances, has proved powerless seriously to shake the structure of the social democracy for the aid of the formula of of air quotes social fascism, then real fascism now threatens the structure, no longer with worldly formulae of so-called radicalism, but with the chemical formulas of explosives. I fucking love this quote. Not with worldly formulae of so-called radicalism, but with chemical formulas of explosives. No matter how true it is that the social democracy, by its whole policy, prepared the blooming of fascism. So this is the idea. Those guys are fascists, social fascists, because they created the conditions for fascism to arise. It is no less true that fascism comes forwards as a deadly threat preliminary to the same social democracy, all of whose magnificence is inextricably bound with parliamentary democratic pacifist forms and methods of government. So social democrats are exactly why fascism happens, and failure to create a popular front with them will result in the death of social democrats. I see chat is mentioning the death of Rosa, like social democrats killed Rosa. I believe this is Trotsky is pointing out that German the Comintern failed to align themselves with the social fascists. If the Sogdems were if the Popular Front would be created to defeat fascism, this would not happen. We see how it is a huge fucking mistake to just dismiss the Social Democrats, because those are the guys who want to survive, and they want the movement to survive, and so they will be one of the first people to be destroyed by fascists.
It's like the first warning sign when they come for the Soc Dems.
Yes, and I believe that in today's world, it is really silly to dismiss the Social Democrats, because they are the most dominant political force in the world, I should say. It is actually the Sogdems.
This section sort of presentient, if you will, and it's sort of talking about the ideas of left unity that we have today, and that any comrade, the extreme version of left unity is that any comrade is a comrade, and we all need to work together in the big fight against anything that's on the right. Because if you just leave the right to be the right, it'll turn into the alt-right immediately, and you got Nazis running around everywhere. And
also,
in this,
please.
No, you go ahead.
I wanted to mention that in the chat, there is this fear that they will hijack the movement. This is the idea that I can't stand behind. I can't really agree with that, because I believe that it is not those political parties that create the conditions for the revolution, for example. Like, if we're talking about the socialist revolution and SOCDEMs sort of, de-radicalizing the masses, if the masses are radicalized, SOCDEMs will not be able to contain them. Like, especially with fascism, like, right at our faces.
The floodgates,
I believe,
radicals opened, essentially.
Yeah. Also, there is this someone in the chat, the Potato Gun, is saying, is fascism only an internal problem in the first world? You never heard of fascism in the third world? I guess it takes other forms. There are right-wing populist movements in the third world that are saying that, we should get rid of the... It depends, actually. Like, for example, in Eastern Europe, fascism is really interesting. Fascists are the ones who are really advocating for the West and Western imperialism. For example, here and in Ukraine, those movements most often align themselves with right-wing, like popular fronts, and those guys are really into integrating with Europe, mostly for the big business to like swell in, and just... Excuse me?
Prolonging capitalism's stranglehold.
Exactly. Like, because most of the third world countries, when they are left-wing, when they are like social democrats, those, like, for example, South America, those guys are really anti-big business. They are anti-neocolonialism. And the right wing is sort of, we need to save capitalism by giving it more power, by giving it more expansion. And fascists in the third world, in most cases, are in it for establishing of the even more global capital.
I think also there's also different types of fascism. Like, Italian fascism could never take root in Germany because Germany needed German fascism, because Hitler knew how to sway the masses and talk of German might. But if he used Italian iconography and rhetoric and whatnot, it wouldn't have worked as well. So when you talk
I can't say there are many differences with them, Like, I can't really say that. Of course, they are talking about, like, they have a different iconography and different approaches in terms of, like, but the tactics, I believe, are mostly the same, and the ideas they're talking about are mostly the same.
Well, what I mean is like very surface level stuff, in that you wouldn't necessarily have a swastika flying on the Ugandan presidential palace. You'd have a Ugandan symbol.
Yeah.
I'm mainly just talking superficially, but when you get down to grassroots, fascism is fascism is fascism, of course.
I agree. Yeah. I agree with that. And so it also says here that if the Communist Party... Yeah, please.
Oh yeah, this section, of course, was talking about the fascist danger looming, particularly in Germany, of course. I think you have a quote about that.
It will be later on when we will in German corps in an army. Yeah,
Hmm.
we can move on to an Aesop fable, which is an amazing amazing thing that Trotsky
Oh,
wrote.
yes.
It's really funny. I will just read it for you. It's really interesting and nice. Uh, a cattle dealer once drove some bulls to a slaughterhouse, and the butcher came nigh with with his sharp knife. "Let us close ranks and jerk up the executioner on our horns," suggested one of the bulls. "If you please, in what way is the butcher any worse than the dealer who drove us hinter with his crudgel?" replied the bulls, who had received a political education in Manulski Institute. He means the Comintern, so like the Soviet Union third international.
Hmm.
"But we shall be able to attend the dealer as well afterwards." "Nothing doing," replied Bulls, firm in the principle to the councillor. "You are trying from the left to shield our enemies. You are a social butcher yourself," and they refused to close ranks. This is exactly what happened in Germany. This is what happens
It's
in every country where like they fail to align themselves with social democrats and now the leftists.
it's a beautiful little tale, and it just
Yeah,
echoes throughout history over and over and
exactly.
over again. Because you could change it out for little things like it's like someone screaming at an Antifa person, "How dare you punch that Nazi? You're just as bad. You're a Nazi yourself. I will refuse to
Hmm.
help you in this fight against Richard Spencer. How dare you?" And then the Antifa guy's there like, "He wants to create an ethno state. Just
Exactly.
I, that's, I'm very passionate about this.
And again, it's more
And
of the smear of the left, and radical left who says, "Oh, social democracy is what created fascism. Those guys are as dangerous or even more dangerous than the fascists."
mm,
So, like, it's really so like accurate in what happened in Europe and what we are facing, what we may be facing with the radical left failing to reach out to, like, for example, Democratic Socialists of America, who are not
mm,
outright, for example, not outright social democrats, but who are sort of non-radicalist reformists, sort of.
mm.
It's really hard to even tell because they are really like a popular front party where they have a bunch of radicals, non-radicals, a bunch of liberals who are radicalizing. So it's like really weird. It's actually I would really like to talk to some of the DSA people. Like
Democratic
if someone
Socialists
has
of America.
America, yeah, I would like to
Oh,
get some of them on the podcast to talk about like on live stream maybe talk about the political party and talk about their alignment. So if anyone has contacts there and the people who are like really would talk to us, I would really like to do that. I would be speaking. I will be the ambassador of left people in the in the Democratic Socialists of America. Uh, okay, so let us move on to German Corps and Army. Um, First of all, it says here very like common knowledge to the leftists and not really common knowledge to many social democrats that cops are not proletariat,
mm,
and it's not outright that those people are not proletariat, but I will quote from the text how Trotsky was explaining it. "The fact that the police was originally recruited in large numbers from among social democratic workers is absolutely meaningless. Uh, Consciousness is determined by environment, ever in this instance. The worker who becomes a policeman in the service of the capitalist state is a bourgeois cop, not a worker. Of late years, this policemen have had to do much more fighting with revolutionary workers than with Nazi students. Such training does not fail to leave its effects. And above all, every policeman knows that though governments may change, the police remains." It's actually a good
mm,
idea that basically police is not like, for example, if we have a new political party in charge of, for example, um, new political party in charge of the country, all of the parliament, like all of the positions in the cabinet are like those people are let go, and new ministers are appointed, right? This does not happen to the police. Those people may have their own political opinions, but it doesn't matter, because when Conservative Party comes to power, you serve the Conservative Party. When a liberal center left comes to power, you serve the center left. It doesn't matter who you serve. You don't serve the political party. You serve the political system. I think those people are. Yeah.
I think an example of this in the real world would be a few years ago, about 3 or 4 or 5 actually. The National Socialist movement in America, a smaller one, had a march, or they would regularly try to have marches, and the people holding back the anti-fascists and Antifa and the counter-protesters were the police, under the guise of, we're just doing our job, we're just protecting freedom of speech. And then recently, a good counter to that is the members of the KKK who were shouting N-words and, go back to Africa and this is a white nation. In front of them was I believe an African-American police officer forced to protect these KKK members as they advocated for sending the police officer back to Africa.
Yeah, because he's black. So I remember that. I remember. I've seen this photo.
Yeah, it's both the dual nature of tragedy and farce at the same time.
Yes.
In how that fascists will try to use the state and the police to protect themselves in order to prolong their movement.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The chat is pointing out a very interesting thing about the modern SOCDEMs and the modern situation, that the SOCDEMs are very likely to call the cops first. It's actually a thing that actually happened to one of our comrades. So basically, we have one of our comrades who's a part of Antifa, his local Antifa, and he wanted to participate in one of the counter protests. It was like anti-immigration thing white nationalists are holding, and he and a bunch of Antifa wanted to jump in and to oppose those guys. And a bunch of social people who were a part of the DSA said that, for our protection, we have informed the police that we will be doing that. And so there will be a bunch of police. So what happened is basically we found out that the police brought they brought a lot of police. They brought the dogs, and they brought a bunch of like police dogs, and they guarded the whole thing. They have police everywhere. They're just swarming, and this police will be protecting the nationalists from the counter protests, and the people in the counter protest actually called the cops, which is, I think, one of the biggest reasons why the SOCDEMs are labeled social fascists, because their ideas of pacifism and democracy, parliamentary democracy, and freedom of speech, quote unquote, makes those situations. I believe that the only reason that we can deal with it is to actually create a popular front that we will be in charge of, not them.
It sounds like in this instance, these right wingers had a platform, but it could have been pulled out from under their feet with the right organization. But then the police was called, and then their position was solidified behind a thin blue line,
Exactly.
and then they could just for hours on end with their permit, I assume as well, spout all of this talk of genocide and killing and deportations and whatnot, and no one could do anything because the police said, "Oh no, we're here now," all because of the sock dems.
Exactly. I
Yeah.
think it's an issue, but dismissing the sock dems and shouting that you're a social fascist, you're a fascist yourself, will not help. This is exactly why we need to unite the ranks with them. And most certainly what Trotskyist parties have advocated for, the radical left should be in charge of it. We shouldn't allow those people to hijack the movement. This is what the people are afraid. And we should be the ones who are the most organized force. Like, why it happens, for example, in this particular case, in my opinion, Antifa and SOCDEMs, Antifa is a disorganized people who are driven by the ideal of anti-fascism and who don't have an organization. There is no leadership. There is no party. It's not a political party and it's not a union, It's just an idea that people subscribe to. While it can be really powerful, and I support Antifa, I don't really see how. I see why DSA managed to do that, because they have a political party, they have a political organization. In this particular case, there was no leftist organization that did anything. There was no central, there was no political party to deal with it. This is my opinion why it happened. What do you think?
Well,
how do we deal with it?
How do we deal with the rise of these fascists? Give them no.
No.
Platform.
How do we deal with SOCDEMs not allowing us to reject them platform? How do we deal with that? This is the question. Because on one side,
it just seems like SOCDEMs mean well, but they essentially only want to go so far. They only want to say, oh, we need some Marxian principles. We want to be able to peacefully bring it in. But when you point out to them that people are going to try to stop you with violence, all of a sudden they say, well, then there must be no violence. We must, halt this march of progress in order to stop anyone being punched in the mouth. And then it all falls apart.
Yes.
So it just seems like they need to read the goddamn bread book or Google Book Chin or just
at least a bit of understanding of what class is. Exactly, I agree.
They haven't gone. They've got to not be sock dem. They've got to be at least dem sock. Damn it!
At least that, yes.
Just at least that. At least that.
Yeah. Be there,
we've gone
please.
Off on a bit of a tangent now.
Yeah. That's okay. Let us move to another interesting point that is stated here. It's an example of how, there are a bunch of leftists who advocate for social democracy is advocating for maintaining Heinrich Brüning, the president of the Weimar Republic, and he is a Bonapartist, which means basically old school republicanism, but with strict I forgot the word. That often happens to me for some reason. Bureaucracy. Yes, bureaucracy. This is the republicanism with bureaucracy and authoritarianism. And he was this guy. He was in charge of Weimar Republic, and a bunch of leftists were saying, "Oh, look, the German army actually he is the president, is the leader of German army, and so if we keep this guy in charge of the army, no fascists will ever appear, ever take over." And this is like, it's really interesting how it says there how we should. What was it about the 7 years?
Yes,
Do you see that?
the quote I think you're referencing is
Yeah, please.
now according to the Constitution in the Reich, where sorry for the pronunciation, is under the command of the
Reichwehr.
President of the Republic. Therefore, it follows it is not dangerous so long as a president faithful to the Constitution remains at the head of the government. But and then it goes on and talks about through an alliance in the parliamentary system, and thereby Hitler's road to power will be blocked for another 7 years.
And then there is an amazing note down there that says, "Oh yeah, Heinrich Göring was actually elected president, and then he appointed Hitler his chancellor the next year."
Yeah, because
like,
that quote was written in 1932.
Yes, and it's like, whoops, hello, like, it's so
7
it's
years,
so funny.
more like maybe 7 months. Yeah.
Yes, and it says here, like, pretending to be saving the nation from the dangers of both the left and the right, they struck the heaviest blows against the left since their primary interest was saving capitalism.
Yeah.
Yes, this is exactly this horseshoe, like, horseshoe theory. People who have been existing like for years, they're like, oh yes, all radicals are bad. Let's ban socialism. Let's strike down on unions. Like, oh shit, we have a bunch of reactionaries in charge. Oh no. It's so funny how it also always happens that horseshoe theory is actually against the left. Fun times indeed. And I like to quote this part. It's really interesting. This is like all those people who are like really into liberals now in America, who really believe that like Hillary Clinton will save America from the fascists.
So if we use chaos math, right, and align the planets, this is how Hillary can still win.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Okay, let me quote this part. To rely upon a president is only to rely upon the government. Faced with the impending clash between the proletariat and the fascist petty bourgeoisie, two camps which together comprise the crushing majority of German nation, these Marxists from the Vorwärts principal social democratic newspaper yelp for the night watchman to come to their aid, help government, exert pressure, Staat, griff zu. So yeah, like, oh, we need the government to save us. This is exactly what fascism is. Like, government will save us. Let the government like exert pressure on those people. And when we will be discussing the army, let's like, yeah, CPUSA is fucking cancer, chat. Yeah, Potato Gun is saying that CPSA said vote for Hillary. They are doing the same fucking thing. Oh no, Trump was literal enemy. We shouldn't allow him in. I believe that fears of Trump are legitimate in some regard because he really plays the game of the nationalists when he says stuff he says. But he's not a fascist. And this whole we should support Hillary is the fucking Heinrich Göring again, you know? Oh no, we shouldn't do that. And then he like fucking appoints Steve Bannon as his like chief, what was he appoints him in office. Advisor. He actually, yeah, he's an advisor, and he actually fired him. Bannon is out of.
Bannon's out.
Bannon's out.
This is the first I've heard of this.
Yeah, so Bannon is out. We can't say what will happen because I believe that Trump is not. Trump is no stronger than the party, than the system. He is not stronger. He doesn't. If he actually uses the people now, which he doesn't, this is where he can actually do what he wants to do to get the popular support, populists to aid him. But the fascists are now trying to hijack Trump.
They're trying to spin the narrative towards their cause.
Exactly.
And make Trump think, oh, if I do this, I'll be even more popular.
Exactly. So they use Trump. Now Trump is a puppet of the fascist rhetoric. all he does is, and like every time he does something, the fascists are clapping their hands, being happy that people are believing what he is saying. Because we should understand Trump is not fascist. He may be using a lot of tactics that fascists used, and fascists really rely upon Trump saying those things for them to be, for people to align themselves with fascists. But I believe that it's not the Trump that is the enemy, it's the fascists that are the enemy. We should be really conscious of that. Trump is not the enemy of the people. It is Richard Spencer and the types. The alt-right, the fascists, the Nazis, those parts of alt-right, not the edgy teens that post memes. What about the memes, It's
what
the
about
nationalists.
the memes, dude?
What about the memes? Exactly. It's about the fascist Nazis and white nationalists. We should strike upon them.
Yeah.
Not like let Hillary save us from Trump. It's not the game that is being played.
Yeah.
We may think it is the game, yeah.
These white nationalists are organizing marches and attacks, and they have killed someone now, and they're injuring hundreds more. Right? They're the enemy.
Yeah.
Because Trump can't even pass a couple of bills about a travel ban. Can't get the Affordable Care Act repealed properly.
He is stuck in the swamp he said he will drain, because he became the swamp.
He is the swamp.
He is the
Trump
swamp.
cucked America. Trump cucked America.
No, it's America that cucked Trump. Like, Trump has no understanding of what is the bourgeois democracy is about, like what's all about. Like, this is exactly what capitalist democracy is. This is the only way we know, except for fascism, how to maintain the property rights. This is the instrument of the capital. This is how it operates. It doesn't. It doesn't operate. It can't fucking do a thing for the people. They can't even provide healthcare to the people that people wanted and they have money for. They can't pass this fucking single payer, but they can't. Like, it's really fucking crazy. This is exactly like what this is what Trump exposed to many leftists, and I believe that this is what we should do. Because all the people want single payer, and Trump won't give it to them because this will fucking annihilate businesses that are built on this crazy system they have in America. Left in America should remember what the old communist Marxists were saying. And remember that one of the biggest strategies to use when pushing forward our agenda is to take an issue which is really simple from the standpoint of people, like single payer. Yeah, I want single payer. I'm American. I want single payer. Yeah, and I want to vote for that. Oh, wait a second. I actually can't, because this system, this bourgeois democracy, can't give it to me. It can't, And it's really crazy because most people support it, people want it, and people are like, oh, sure, you are we the people, yeah. We want single payer. Give us then single payer, and then this whole bullshit starts, and the left appears and points the finger and says, "Look at that. You want something, you can't have it, because the system doesn't work. It's not the Trump, it's not Hillary, it's the system that doesn't work." Yes, Trump may go on vacations, more spend on playing fucking golf most of his fucking time in office. He goes on those fucking vacations all the time. But it's just funny, and it's not that he doesn't work, it's the whole system that doesn't work. Like, Obama worked more than Trump. During the same period, he went on less, vacations. But he didn't pass single payer as well. Obamacare is not that good. Like, it has its issues, and single payer is the only answer. And the left should use this as one of the biggest speaking points.
Now is the time to organize if you haven't already.
Exactly. So bourgeoisie, petty bourgeoisie, and proletariat. So
you okay, Eugene? You're right. You take a breath. Yeah. Have a sip of water. that was okay. Beautiful, by the way.
Thank
you.
Call
to action.
Yes. um, so let us move on. So there are three stages of bourgeois dictatorship. First one is Jacobinism. So it's left wing of petty bourgeois forces in the French Revolution and in those revolutionary phase, led by Robespierre, cutting the heads of the fucking kings, Republic, you know, all of those amazing shit. Then we have reformist democracy, including social democracy. So this is what we live in now. And then we have fascism, the third stage of bourgeois dictatorship. So those are the only programs that exist. So there's no like, oh, we have the Christian Democrats, we have Social Democrats, we have Conservatives, we have the National Party, we have like Democratic Socialists, we have Communists. No, there are three stages of the whole thing: Jacobinism, democracy, and fascism. And this is what we are afraid that fascism, like many people in the past believe that, oh, fascism is just like the reaction, and it's just, it's just it can't maintain itself, and the communism will appear, and we will have socialism because fuck that, it's just that like capitalism and decay, and it will decay. I believe that history proved that like the train of history is not on our side. It's not on anyone's side. May as well be the future, of our world.
Unless something is done, of course.
Unless something is done, obviously. So it says this whole article is discussing this part of it is discussing the forces of the class contradictions, and how those forms of domination work with each other. And yeah. Oh, yeah, I would like to quote this part because it's a really interesting thing. In the epoch of the rise, the growth, and the bloom of capitalism, the petit bourgeoisie, despite acute outbreaks of discontent, generally marched obediently in the capitalist harness. Nor could it do anything else. But under the conditions of the capitalist disintegration, so we're talking about like grand economic turmoil, crisis, war, stuff like this, and of the impasse. I'm not really sure.
Impasse.
I'm sorry. Impasse in the economic situation. The petit bourgeoisie strives, seeks, attempts to tear itself loose from the fetters of the old masters and rulers of society. It is quite capable of linking up its fate with that of the proletariat. For that, only one thing is needed. The petit bourgeoisie must first acquire faith in the ability of the proletariat to lead society onto a new road. A proletariat can inspire this faith only by its strength, by the firmness of its actions, by a skillful offensive against the enemy, by the success of the revolutionary policy.
These stages we were talking about, the Jacobinism.
I think Jacobinism.
Jacobinism. Then to democracy, and then to fascism. This rise in the proletariat, lighting the fires. Where do you the proletariat can inspire this faith only by its strength? Where do you think that would fit in? Into this system? Where was Trotsky trying to say that the proletariat can inspire this area?
So I believe that in the text he also mentions that petit bourgeoisie is the main force behind fascism. Those guys look at the financial capital, and the financial capital is failing them, and they, with all their hate towards capitalists that they had for years, this whole hate of globalism that we have now, all this hate of those, elitists,
Mm.
in like all this hate boils up to a point where they stand to choose whether they, petit bourgeoisie, join the fascism, like embody fascism by saying, oh, we should fight the capital, and then the fascists tell them, oh, by the way, the proletariat are the filth, they are degenerate
The
communists,
unwashed masses.
unwashed masses, they are communists, we should destroy all of their organization, we should destroy the unions, we should destroy the communist parties. This is what they do, and then they fucking bureaucratize the whole thing, and they maintain this the destroyed proletarian masses in this totalitarian system of fascism. Or the left, by creating a strong opposition towards the fascist ideologues, by creating legit systems, legit organizations with concrete ideas, can actually sway the petit bourgeois into onto their side. There was a really interesting quote somewhere later on in the text. Let me find it. About yes. I will move on to, does the petit bourgeoisie fear the revolution? Two quotes from there. It's on the end of the of this part. I will quote from here. It must have a clear program. He's talking about the labor movement. It must have a clear program of action and must be ready to struggle for power by all possible means. Tempered by its revolutionary party, revolutionary party for a decisive and pitiless struggle, the proletariat says to the peasants and the petit bourgeoisie of the cities, quote, "We are struggling for power. Here is our program. We are ready to discuss with you changes in this program. We will employ violence only against big capital and its lackeys, but with you, toilers, we desire to conclude an alliance on the basis of given program. The peasants will understand such language. Only they must have faith. Must have faith in the capacity of the proletariat to seize power. But for that, it is necessary to purge the united front of all equivocation. Thank you. Of all indecision, of all hollow phrases. It is necessary to understand the situation and to place oneself seriously on the revolutionary road." So what did he mean by that? He meant that we should have clear understanding what the fuck we are doing. This actually relates to what we were talking with Batko about Leftipol. Leftipol, the only problem Leftipol has is no fucking clue what it's doing. And we need a coherent, Leftipol needs a coherent program, manifesto, if you may, that will explain to people, like, okay, this is what we are, this is what we believe in. If there is no such thing, people won't join. Like, as Potato Gun pointed out, fascism is scapegoats, socialism theory and analysis. Exactly. A real revolutionary, to quote Trotsky, is the person who understands reality, like, to the maximum. Like, the most realist person is the revolutionary. Like, if we analyze and if we give without any, like, fucking, socialism is equality of the people, and we, the glorious people, deserve. It's propaganda. We don't need that. We need concrete statements of what is to be done and present it to the people and show them. Look, this is the ideas. Join us. We are strong. We have organization. We have successes. You know.
So my question in where would this organization and written down analysis come into it? It sounds like not only does there need to be some kind of nuanced and informative vanguard, but it doesn't matter where it fits in. It just has to, wherever it can, even if it's in the phase of Jacobinism or democracy or, God forbid, fascism. It just has to do it straight away.
Well, I believe we won't be facing Jacobinism anytime soon because
good point.
They sort of succeeded. This is why we believe in like liberalism, and like because fucking Robespierre cut enough heads. But I believe that this sort of this organization should be how to explain it correctly. It should be sort of an opposition towards the fascist ideals. So we have a bunch of people railing behind the fascists, and I can't really say that the left at the moment has enough organization. So this left theory, this left party, if you may, revolutionary party or movement, doesn't exist. At the same time, fascists don't have the support they need at the moment because there is no economic turmoil. When this economic turmoil happens, if one side wants to take power, they better have a cohesive theory and cohesive understanding of the problems, and ideally a cohesive support of the, like in our case, of class-conscious individuals who are willing to challenge the establishment. You know.
So even
this
if
is what I'm talking about.
The swing voter who wants to ask 1,000 questions, we better have 1,000 answers for that swing voter, or else they're going to go, well, the fascists got their shit together. We better, join the fascists. Like, no, no. So
exactly. Not only that, but also we should have structured. It's not only we should have answers, but we should have structured organization that has shown itself to be effective. So what I mean by that is that we need an organization that would be able to, an organization. I can really believe that it could be, I can't really say whether it is just like one political party, vanguard party that we should all rally behind. I'm not really sure with all the pluralism of opinions, even on the left nowadays, we could have one revolutionary party. One that I can't really say, maybe, but maybe not. I don't know. It's a point to discuss.
I just want to add to that quickly. Like, organization just doesn't mean membership.
Yeah,
it also means understanding definitions and theories and whatnot. So if you gather a bunch of your friends together to go protest something, that's good. You're organizing, but you got to also let them know and understand this is exactly why we're trying to tear down this Confederate statue. Mm-hmm. This is the nuanced reasons. If people ask you this question, this is the answer you should give if you believe it. Instead of just that video of someone saying, we don't like Trump and we want to make a change. How are we going to do it?
Nobody knows. Exactly.
And then they don't know. Yeah. Yeah, and then because if you're not knowledgeable, you'll end up becoming a meme, and not a good meme either.
Yeah. Chat is saying potato gun. Political parties are useless for anything other than organization. Yeah, sort of. And I can't really say that we need one vanguard. As we said, you could have small groups of people who are doing something that are, how to say it correctly, that understand what is the whole perspective, what is happening in the whole country and in the world, so that they understand the context of their actions. If there are those two things, like organization in movement and understanding of the perspective, this is what a political party is. Like, Wolf Leftist, hello, what's going on here? We're discussing fascism, what it is, and how to fight it by Leon Trotsky. I will send the link in chat. We are going. How Barbie? We are going. Sort of like
I
paragraph
think
by paragraph almost.
I just want to
Yeah.
interject. I think we're actually probably going possibly overtime. How long have we been going for now?
Oh, we've been going for an hour and 20 minutes. Let us move on then from this topic and sort of,
Yeah.
try to. I'm really sorry if you have other things to do. I'm just free the whole day. I can talk about it like for 12 hours. I don't fucking care. So,
It's 8:30 p.m. where I am.
oh, okay.
What section were we up to?
We are on Does the Petty Bourgeoisie Fear Revolution? And before we move on to the next one, I'd like to point out. I would like to read it because this is just. I just will read it because this is just fucking Twitter after the Charlottesville. This is what Twitter was, and like Trotsky fucking dissed those people from the grave by writing that. Take a look at this. Parliamentary cretins who consider themselves connoisseurs of the people, we call them radical centrists, like to repeat, one must not frighten the middle classes with revolution. They do not like extremes. In this general form, this affirmation is absolutely false. Naturally, the petit proprietor prefers order so long as business is doing well, and as long as he hopes that tomorrow it will go better. But when this hope is lost, he is easily enraged and is ready to give himself over to the most extreme measures. Otherwise, how could he have overthrown the democratic state and brought fascism to power in Italy and Germany? The despairing petit bourgeois sees in fascism, above all, a fighting force against big capital, and believes that, unlike working class parties, which deal only in words, fascism will use force to establish more quote unquote justice. The peasant and the artisan are in their manner realists. They understand that one cannot forego the use of force. So this is amazing. Like this is what this whole deal is all about. Like this is what the Twitter was talking about. Oh, we shouldn't fear them with the revolution. The people want. We don't have a. And the left does the same. Oh, there is no revolutionary situation. There is no, like, those people won't join us. There is no way the first world can have a revolution. Yes, because those people are okay now. Those people are having, like, business is doing well. The stocks are growing. New clients are, like, coming over. Like, everything is great. Until everything isn't. And you have fascists, you know? So, like, fuck me. This is the thing. This is exactly what those people are talking about. Like, what's your opinion on that?
Well, on Twitter and in this book, it talks about the sudden onset of war and fascism, and you can just see it in America. Like I was talking to a few friends of mine, and they were saying, jokingly saying, in about a month or two we'll be in Civil War II Electric Boogaloo. But I was trying to say to them that they kind of are in a Civil War II. It's not going to be, sections of the military breaking off, and there's going to be two big sides. No, it's going to be lots of little fractured ones. Cracked.com on one of their podcasts spoke about this. The American intelligence community was talking about how these hundreds of different militias all had their own little ideologies, and pretty soon they might start actually fighting one another. And some were left wing, some were right wing, some were radical centrists, and it looks like the idea that there would be thousands of little fronts is true, because the right are fractured. You've got the Proud Boys, you've got the white nationalists, you've got the KKK, you've got the National Socialist Movement, you've got people that just want their healthcare business to stay afloat.
Yes.
They're starting to attack one
Oh,
another.
I'm waiting
And
for those people from
yeah,
the insurance companies arming themselves
yeah,
against the
yeah.
communists.
Yeah. You see,
Yeah.
what I was trying to convince my
Mhm.
friends of, this is the whole point, essentially, is that
Yeah.
the first shots have been fired, and the first death has happened because
Yes.
if you look at the example from World War One, Princip, who
Mhm.
shot the Archduke Ferdinand, it wasn't he shot that and then immediately Germany marched into France. No, there was a slow build-up. But people say that the
Before
first
that.
shot was fired with Princip, but that was months before World War One started. So in the same way,
No,
in
it wasn't a month
America,
before. It was like a week before. I believe that there wasn't the first shots in the war. It was the whole deal that with everybody knew the war will happen before even anyone considered killing this Franz Ferdinand dude.
well,
Like
see,
it was
that's what
all leading up to that. Yeah.
yeah, what I'm trying to say is that while they were saying, "Oh, a war could be happening. It might be about to happen," it was already happening around them.
Yes.
And people
Yeah, I understand exactly.
yeah, people in the US are saying, we need to start protecting ourselves. We've got to start carrying knives and guns because the white nationalists might be coming for us. They might start some kind of a war.
Hmm.
It's started. It's happening now, and
Exactly.
an IWW person is now
The first
dead
victim
because of
of
it.
this war. Yes.
Yeah, and people on Twitter have
Uh-huh.
been saying it. I've been saying it, and even Trotsky in 1934 was saying it with this little excerpt in this book.
Exactly. Oh, let's just move
And
on to workers'
there's my
militia and its
little
opponents. If we
yeah, that's my little soapbox moment for you.
could. Hmm. So, discussing the arming of the workers. There is a lot of critique in this part. There is a lot of critique of the actions that the Comintern used, of how they criticized that, like, oh, the German workers who are armed are opportunists. It's terrible. We should disarm them. Like, fuck me. A lot of this critique of like the people of the International, which is legit, but I don't think we have time, and we shouldn't discuss this part, to be honest. But oh, this is like to your point. I have a nice quote of Trotsky. When the fascists kill a revolutionist or burn down a building of the proletariat newspaper, the workers are to sigh philosophically. Alas, murders and arsons are products of the capitalist system. It says of how fascism is just a product of the capitalist system,
Hmm.
and how, oh, it's the whole system that is fucked. And like we should sigh philosophically and go home with easy consciousness. Fatalist prostration. I'm sorry, is
Prostration?
prostration. Yes, it's substituted for the military theory of Marx to the sole advantage of the class enemy. The ruin of petty bourgeoisie is, of course, a product of capitalism. The growth of the fascist bands in it is, in turn, a product of the ruin of petty bourgeoisie. But it's all those people that are like oath keepers, all those militias,
Yeah.
who were in the 90s, and those guys are really still big now. Um, but on the other hand, the increase in the misery and the revolt of the proletariat are also products of capitalism. And the militia, in its turn, is a product of sharpening of the class struggle. Why then, for the Marxists of Le Humanite, Le Human, I'm not really sure, it's the name of newspaper, I guess. Yes, it's a newspaper. Are the fascist bands the legitimate product of capitalism, workers' militia the illegitimate product of Trotskyism? The legitimate product of the Trotskyists? It is impossible to make the head or tail of this. It's really advocated for actually arming the people. And it says here that there are a bunch of problems with this. It says in the text that we have no money. Literally, like he was saying the same thing that we're talking about now. Oh shit, we don't have money for guns. We like those
Yeah.
dudes have maybe like a couple of dozens of revolvers and some knives. But they're saying that there are many ways to get weapons. One of those things is confiscating weapons from the fascists, which I found hilarious. Like Trotsky proposes that we defeat the fascists, beat them up, and take away their guns and arm ourselves. If we keep doing that, the state, which often like supports fascists by actually giving them guns, selling them guns, and like providing them with guns, they will be like more hesitant to arm the fascists if this in like arms the proletariat.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like in America, there are more guns than people. I think we're fine. Yes, there are a bunch of them, but those guns we don't have. Like, I know a dude who works in the gun shop and who is a fucking like communist. I know a tank that works in the a tanker that works in a gun shop, and this guy has the keys to the armory. But the problem is that don't every person who has the keys to the armory is a communist, and we don't have. Oh, wait a second. The problem is we don't have their guns. Yeah, sell drugs and shit. Yeah, good idea. Just sell drugs and shit. But acquisition of guns is really important, and we have to work with what we have to work with. When you read this whole thing, about workers' militia, I believe a good idea is to understand that not all that workers' militias are just like the right-wing militias, are decentralized organizations that's all over the country, and it's not about creating an army. At the point, at least at that point, it's about creating small groups of people who armor themselves and train themselves. We have a bunch of red guards. Red guards are the militias. Like, so joining like this organizing the red guards is one of the things that is to be done to oppose the same thing on the fascist side. Like, it's not about creating violence, it's about paying back with the same kind of violence that fascists impose on us while we strive for power. This is what class struggle is about. It's not about individual terrorism, it's about creating the conditions for that.
So Trotsky was advocating all this in this section of
yes.
the workers' militia. What do you think a workers' militia in the modern day, its role today? Because at a lot of protests, there's the right wingers, if you will, they come to protest because of the open carry laws. They're carrying M16s, AR-15s. I don't know my guns. Sorry. They're carrying big guns.
Yeah.
Do you think the proportional response is for socialist workers of the armed world to show up as well with their guns?
I believe yes. And this is what Red Guard has been doing. They just show up with guns. Like, I will now shill one thing. If you're like really interested in those things, if you really want to learn, if you understand that you have no idea, like I will finish the thoughts and then I'll. First of all, it's about showing up with guns and protect the left wing. It's about shooting back when the first shots will be fired at us. And first shots have already been fired. Like, the whole deal that this guy wasn't shot down when he started to roll, when he crashed into the people, This is what the Red Guard is there for. When this sort of thing happens, first of all, they'll be more hesitant to do that if there are people with M16 standing there, just chilling with the face covered, It's sort of scary to do that. And if, exactly, Barbie is pointing out that Heather would be still alive if it was the case, yes. Even thought about this kind of offensive if Red Guard was there protecting IWW. And we should get more people, more Antifa people with makeshift weapons. This is what you can do, make makeshift weapons. Not to attack people. This is just fucking crazy. We shouldn't do that. Individual terrorism is not what we are about. because
Deterrence.
individual
Would you say
terrorism.
it's more about deterrence against future acts and purely for
Yes,
self-defense? Yeah.
it's
Okay,
purely for
I get you.
self-defense because we are about, like, communists are not about artificially creating problems. We are not artificially creating problems. We are pointing out contradiction in capitalism, and we are sharpening the class struggle. And what I mean by sharpening the class struggle is that we are showing the people, like, we are demanding things for the people on the basic rights of being a worker, and we demand things, and those things cannot be demanded, and so we take them. This is the idea, and because we demand them, people would want to shut us down. This is why we need guns, and this is why it slowly erupts into a revolutionary situation. So I would like to shill Socialism Barbarism's server now. The whole idea, it's called Revolutionary Keyboard Warriors, and it's a server on Discord. It's in chat for people who. This is the invite link. This is the invite link to the Rivals chat. I think it will work. I think, yeah. And you can join the server, and the whole idea of it is that here we discuss different strategies, we discuss different guns, we discuss what the enemy is doing, and basically it is done only for educational purposes. We do not advertise any revolutionary movements there. We do not instigate violence, which is banned completely. We do not discuss real events on which, you want to go or you wish to recruit. We don't recruit revolutionaries here. It is done only to learn what should you do in case you want to use guns, in case you will be faced against the fascists, and how those reactionaries in your local area, and discuss those things. It's really good server. It's really big, and Barbie and a bunch of other people are doing a whole deal of work.
I'm so sorry, my phone just went off.
Oh, you need to answer the call?
No. It's fine.
Okay.
I don't know if anyone heard it, but my
I've heard
ringtone is the Soviet national anthem.
Amazing. Okay, so I put up the link in the chat. I put the link in the description of this video. You should join this thing. It's really cool. Barbie has been it's a really great idea that he did it. I'm here. A bunch of other people are there. So feel free to join.
I'm in it myself, and I must say they're a very friendly bunch, and they're always willing to teach as long as you're willing to learn.
I learned a bunch of things about guns there.
Yeah. I've learned so much there just reading through all the little things, all the different chat sections for this type of gun, this type of gun, this type of self-defense martial art, this type of self-defense martial art. It's great. It's a good resource. And again, I too would like to stress that it is for self-defense and not for future planning.
Yeah, exactly.
Just want to nip it in the bud. Just nip it in the bud, just there.
Yeah, please don't advocate violence there. Advocating violence in chat in this server is banned. This is the only, one of the only rules there are, and you can read about that in the server itself. So join the server. It is pretty cool. Let us move on to quickly go through two last chapters of the book. The perspective in the United States, October 1940. Here, Trotsky is going through what happened with fascism in America during the labor wars, which is an amazing thing. I would really like to get someone to talk about this period of history when the IWW was huge, when a bunch of communists were organizing people, when outright war happened against the working class. It's really interesting, what happened there. And here, Trotsky is going through the reasons why it's failed, the reasons for its failure. I would like to quote it here. The American workers are very combative. as we have seen during the strikes, they have had the most rebellious strikes in the world. This is why I love America. America is so amazing. They have the best strikes, even, you know? They have the best hamburgers and the best strikes. America is just the best. I am really for American strikes. I'm a huge fan of American strikes. What the American worker misses is the spirit of generalization or analysis for his class position in a society as a whole. This lack of social thinking has its origin in the country's whole history. So yeah, it's this, lack of theory, Oh, Ptagon, feel free to share the link to the documentary. Feel free to share it in chat. Maybe we will watch it at some point. That would be really interesting. Like watch it as a group. So yeah, please. I interrupted you.
Yeah, this harkens back to what you were saying before, and what I was saying before, and what Trotsky seems to somehow from beyond the grave agree with us is that if you want to be effective in a strike or lobbying, you've got to know the analysis and the generalization and your position with your class. And it says it right here in the quote. It's beautiful.
I agree. And I believe that he said a very interesting thing. First of all, he said that all this shit that is going down, like a bunch of reactionary policies, like in the 1940s, it's all leading up to the war. And he says, oh, America is so like ready for war. He says, war dictatorship, meaning the dictatorship of military machine, of the staff, of the finance capital, is not fascist dictatorship. Claiming that those people are fascists is really like a huge mistake. Like, it's not good praxis to label everyone fascist. Those things are different. This is done to lead a war, and this is why military is in charge. And later on, he says a thing which is one of those mistakes that people, like one of his predictions, in which he made a mistake. He says that after the war, wait, where is that?
I'm sorry, I have to step out for just a moment. I'm so sorry to be so unprofessional.
Will you be back?
I'll be right back. I'll be right back.
Mute yourself, and I will be like discussing this with people. So he says here that after the war will be finished, the masses will be radical again. Like, this whole thing will start over again. We will still have communists and fascists. Those will like continue. He made a mistake. Like, let me find this in text. There will therefore work in more rapid tempo. Yeah, like blah blah blah. Fascist elements. Where is it? More dictatorship. Yeah, when the revolutionary parties betray them, then the vanguard of workers shows its incapacity to lead the people to victory. Then the farmers, the small businessmen, and unemployed, the soldiers, etc., become capable of supporting fascist movements, but only then. Yes, this is what he was saying about war dictatorship. The war itself is maintaining people in the just like right after the revolution, it maintains people in this sort of, oh, we are fighting something, we shall not go, do betray. We won't betray it. This is why the civil wars are like this is why the really, really strict policies can be enacted during the revolutionary period on both sides, and there will be no problem with that. Same with the war situations. This is like what he was talking about. Trump is not a fascist, quick reminder, but he is playing the hand, so please don't label America fascist or him fascist. Okay.
I'm back.
Okay.
So sorry about that.
I guess like we have. This is what he was talking about. This. Oh yeah. This is another to finish off this part. He says, fascism comes only when the working class shows complete incapacity to take into its own hands the fate of society. Fascism is always sort of as I mentioned before, the conservative revolution, the reaction towards the failure of the socialist revolution. I remember there was one. Actually, it was the guy from Frankfurt School. Oh shit! Cultural Marxism minute.
Oh
He
no!
said that,
Oh, cultural Marxism up in this. Oh.
yes, we are cultural Marxists. You know me. He said that behind every fascist military dictatorship, there is a failed revolution. So whenever we look anywhere, there was a movement, labor movement, communist movement that failed to take power. This is what happens, and this is what we see now with fascism emerging when there is no good opposition on the left, which should be created as fast as possible, especially with all this populism rising, with Bernie Sanders supporters, which is just an indicator of the real problems that America faces now, if we talk about America. And the last part is about, build the Revolutionary Party. So here he says that we should use theoretical analysis, experience, and create. I will quote this part. Both theoretical analysis as well as the rich historical experience of the last quarter of century have demonstrated with equal force that fascism is each time the final link of a specific political cycle composed of the following: the greatest crisis of capital society, the growth of the radicalization of the working class, the growth of sympathy towards the working class, and the yearning for change on the part of the rural and urban petit bourgeoisie, with extreme confusion of the big bourgeoisie, its cowardly, treacherous maneuvers aimed at avoiding the revolutionary climax. This is the fucking Soros funding the, those bunch of people who just talking about reforms,
Soros funds Bad Mouse, apparently.
He does. Oh, and Barbie is saying, on notes, I've met alt-righters who are former occupiers. Exactly. This is what Trotsky is saying right here. The exhaustion of the proletariat, growing confusion and indifference, then the aggravation of the social crisis, the despair of petit bourgeoisie, its yearning for change, the collective neurosis of the petit bourgeoisie, its readiness, readiness to believe in miracles. I love this part. Its readiness for violent measures. I don't like this part. The growth of hostility towards the proletariat, which has deceived its expectations. These are the premises for a swift formation of a fascist party and its victory. I think it's pretty on point. This is exactly what happens all the time. And we see it's like sort of emerging. Yeah.
Yeah, this is like a mirror being held up to our society right now. All of the things that were just listed are things that are happening right now. Just it's not that they're happening in 1930 or 1940. It's that they're happening now. And it doesn't look exactly the same. It's not in black and white. It's happening. There's the despair of the petty bourgeoisie. There's aggravation of the social crisis.
Yes.
There's a readiness for violent measures from the right, as we have seen.
Exactly.
And yeah.
I'd like to read the last part, the very last part of the book. Ahead lies a favorable perspective, providing all the justification for revolutionary activism. It is necessary to utilize the opportunities which are opening up and to build the Revolutionary Party. I think this is pretty much on point. The whole idea that we have fascists now and liberals can't do anything about it, we should understand that this is the part when we emerge. This is the part when left says, we are fucking against that, and we want to destroy it.
Now
Because
is our time.
exactly, liberals can't oppose it. I remember reading an article that, liberals are saying that radical left is like, to hell with this. Social democrats, like, to hell with this. We don't want that. We are the elites. We are the number one. Yay, us. They don't yet understand. And we should tell them that, that we, as the left, are the only way, the only real, the only real power that can save their ideals and their asses, basically. If we just stand by and don't do anything when we have fascists, liberals will fail and they will die at the hands of the fucking Führer of the great leader of America.
Yeah, exactly. And just talking to your friend that's a bit of a swing voter, is all you need to do if that's all you can do. Like Trotsky may in this book speak of arming a militia, and you picture yourself at the barricades and you pop your head over and you see a line of fascist tanks. It doesn't have to be that, because if all you can do is just if all you can do is just suggest to your friend to join a union, then that's what you do. You don't hold back to say, hey, you should join the services union or the coal mining union. And that's all. If that's all you can do, that's all you do. And you've already helped stop your friend from considering buying a tiki torch and marching into town. Yeah,
I agree. We operate on a principle from each according to his or her ability. If you can do something, do that. For example, I can push out tons of content, tons of leftist content, and build a base of people who are listening to me on this platform, on others. By the way, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to iTunes and SoundCloud. Thank you very much. I love you. But you may not do that. You may not have inspiration, you may not have the ability, or you may don't want to do that. Maybe you don't like that. Okay. You may don't do that then. Like, if you can't do something, don't do that. For example, I can't join a union because we don't have normal unions here. Issue with many times. Our unions, if there are any, are really weak and they're struck down by anti-union laws. And if I join a union, I will have a bunch of problems, like real problems. In America, it's easier to be a part of a union. You actually can be a part of a union, Here, no. So I can't do that, but I can do this. So I'm doing this, like, and it's really all about this. It's really all about being where you can be and fighting where you can fight. For example, I can't be in Charlottesville because I'm in Belarus. Better example, I can't join the Antifa in Charlottesville or the ranks of IWW, but I can support them by doing my own part. And it's about everyone.
Solidarity, of course.
Yeah, and the chat is saying unions in America are pretty much weak too. Yes, they are. But if I join a union, I won't find a job. I will be fired and I will be blacklisted. So there's a huge difference between not doing anything and being unemployed because you joined a union. Like, it's really fucked up. Yeah.
Another little tidbit is if you are going to organize, if you are going to start a YouTube leftist shitposting video, if you are going to join a union, understand that these sort of things take time.
They are.
It took years for Lenin and Trotsky to do the revolution in 1917. It took them years to fight the Civil War. It took years for
not only that,
IWW to form.
It took years to material conditions to rise for those things, for the people to actually want that.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen tomorrow. But if you prepare now, right, it'll make it all the more easier in a month or so when that march is coming up. Or if there's a big, million workers march next year, right? They just need time to prepare. That's why it's a year away, yeah.
Exactly. Revolution is not a couple of days when you take arms and go and like fight the government. Revolution is a long process, which is going now, which is like happening now, and people are dying on both sides. Like the question is, I believe that second American Revolution is here. The question is whether it will fail, whether it will result in no one winning or one of the sides winning. You know?
Yeah.
Like this is a good way of thinking about it. Like, oh, revolutionary situation is not here. It is here. We have people dying on the left. You know, we have first murder by the fascist of the leftist. Like, isn't it fucking like time to think about it? Like Trotsky was mentioning it in the book. Like, oh, we shouldn't agitate the revolution because this will only provoke the fascists. What are you talking about? We already have death in our in our ranks.
The agitation has
dying.
happened. Agitation is here. Now is the time to organize.
Exactly. Fuck me. Like, it is time to actually start reading about it, time to get out there and do something about it, discuss it, and to show the people that we have a coherent program and that is adapted to 21st century. And we have an organization. Not only like we can theorize all we want. If you go on Discord, this is all we do. I love it, but this is all we do. You know? The question is to create a cohesive organization to actually do shit, you know? Yeah. Not only just to not create a party, but to do shit and correlate it to what other people do. Like, this is what it's all about. Join the Antifa, join the Redneck Revolt, teach yourself how to use a gun. It's really easy to teach yourself how to use a gun. Guns are simple. Go and teach yourself how to use a gun. Like, yes.
Yeah, it doesn't even, again, it doesn't even need to be violent. It could just be as simple as joining a union. Or going to a
just join fucking union. This is one of the, like, those things are the simplest ones that should be done, like, 100%. Join a union. But, like, yes.
I gotta say, I think I've learned, you know, a lot from this book.
Same.
A collection of pamphlets have taught me so much. And especially fascism isn't always obvious. It isn't always someone with a mustache and a symbol on a big flag. It can be very subtle. But before long, that subtlety is stripped away, and then you see the bare bones of fascism staring you down the face. Sometimes that face is behind the wheel of a car, unfortunately.
I completely agree with that. Sometimes he is carrying a ridiculous torch, and everybody is like laughing, oh, haha, so funny. But those guys are literally shouting the things Nazis shouted in the 30s. Blood and soil.
So I would highly recommend that those people read Fascism, What It Is and How to Fight It by Leon Trotsky.
Yeah, it was a very nice discussion. I was really happy to have you on to talk about it. And I would like to point out that this is a series. This is the first inaugural episode of the series, and we will be doing another one of those in 4 weeks on 16th of September, where we will be taking on another book, which is bigger. It's like 114 pages, but like not that big pages. It's okay. It's normal size. It's a very interesting book. It's Marsh to Catalonia by George Orwell. Have you ever read George Orwell? Yes, we did. And we will be discussing in 4 weeks George Orwell. We'll be discussing the Revolutionary Catalonia. We'll be discussing this book. We will be talking about what Orwell's experience, his figure, quite controversial, I should say, and quite controversial revolution. And it is really interesting topic, which will be really cool to talk about. So on September 16th, in 4 weeks, on Saturday, around the same time, the time varies, we will be going live discussing the Homage to Catalonia by George Orwell with TK Jones.
Yes, I would love to be. I would love to come back and discuss that book.
Mhm.
And I must say, I've had a lot of fun today, and I've learned so much. Thank you for having me, and I look forward
Thank you for coming.
to our next meeting online.
Sure. And thanks Chad for joining us to talk about these things. Thank everybody who watching this whole joint thing or listening to us in recording. We talked for 2 hours about this. Dude, we're going
Yeah.
full Sargon on this shit, man.
Don't mention his name. He'll appear. He'll be in the comments later.
Oh god.
Like you mentioned Mr. Dapperton, and suddenly, bam, he shows up in the comments.
Yes, he
So it's gotta be the
disappears. He
same
has
with
this
Sargon.
he has the encom sense where he oh no, somebody's talking about anarcho not encom, an encap sense. Somebody's
My
talking about anarcho capitalism. I should be there in comments. It's so
my
funny.
anarcho-capitalism sense is tingling. Quick, NAP to the to the NAP mobile. Do-do-do-do-do.
And there are a bunch of kids like standing around. Oh, my child slave, my employees. Oh god.
Yeah. I mean,
So
he has
ridiculous.
a NAP mobile, but he doesn't have enough bitcoins to buy his way onto the road, so he can't drive it anywhere. Oh man, I'm
Yes.
too much shit now.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you very much for listening to this. See you in a week, and see you tomorrow when on the next episodes of the podcast. Bye bye, everyone.
Catch you later.